Am I audible? Are you able to see the presentation now? Can anybody give the thumbs up? Okay. Good morning. Good morning, all. Ramya, are we going to get started? 7:05 on the clock. Okay, fine. Let me know if you're able to see my screen, and then we'll get started. I'm sharing my screen. Just a second. Are you able to see my screen? I don't know which screen are you able to see. Just a second. I'm just trying to do one thing. that. Are you able to see the presentation, right? Ramya, give me a thumbs up or a yes, no on the chat window, please. If you can see the level up SQL session, then please say, okay, fine. All set. I will then get started. Fine. Okay, let me do it in a presentation mode. Okay, so thank you all for joining the session. Today we are going to start with the SQL batch, and let me introduce myself, and then we'll get started with the session, content, agenda, and the approach. How are you going to plan to run this entire session batch? Today being the first session, we are going to do uh, a few things. One, because it is a large batch size, what we are going to do here, I'm going to introduce myself, and then we'll introduce and get to know about each other. Today, what we will do, we'll start with installing SQL Server as product. I will say why installing SQL Server as a product. We are going to complete in this entire SQL session at least two products. One as a corporate product, like Microsoft SQL Server. Other is a open source like Postgre. Um, why are we choosing these two products? These are widely used industry approved products that data engineering and the machine learning teams heavily leverages. Um, and when we actually learn these two products, we are actually ready for industry's majority of the SQL products like Oracle, IBM's DB2 or MySQL or uh, or any open source technology related products that is available in the market for doing data engineering. We are also going to talk about what is the session structure. We'll set up some ground rules, and each time permit will start with one agenda topic around the database objects. We'll study some of the SQL component. What do you mean by SQL concepts and each time permits? Like I say, then definitely we'll start with one of the command stack to create objects. Okay. With that intent, I will go introduce myself. My name is Raghav. I have around 18 years of industry experience. I am with Level Up since last 6-7 years. I will be joining the batch as a faculty. You will so typically I have run many batches. And I will train you up not only around the SQL. I will make you understand what are the relevant interview questions when you actually complete this particular course for the data engineering, or the part of the data engineering is SQL. You should be able to answer each and every SQL related questions during your interview processes. Also, you would be confidently be able to do all the SQL related activities. We'll understand what SQL related activities come up during the data engineering processes, and we will be doing everyday exercises so that towards the end of the session you have done enough of what you are supposed to do, being a 4 to 5 years candidate within the market as well. Okay, so it will be purely hands-on. Try to bear with me, try to learn whatever I'm saying in the class. Every session will be supplied with interview questions. Toward the end, I will spend quality time asking about a few industry approved questions for those sessions every day. In that way, you are not only learning the concept, you are getting awareness about the interview question as well, what might come up. Now, pausing back, I want to go back onto the, like I said, we'll spend at least, because today is the first day, I want to spend 10-15 minutes of time around the introduction. So, Ramya, would you like to unmute candidate one by one, give them chance to talk about it? How are you planning? Ramya, can you help? Yeah. Okay, we can't do that. We are in a classroom, so people can talk about it, or is it not a possibility? Because my session was intended to be driven in that way, so that at least I will collect something, and from there we'll actually start working on some exercises. No way it is possible from the class. Can't class unmute themselves from their own PC, and they can speak. It seems like a no. So okay, we'll give a skip and then we'll proceed. Okay. Uh, Ramya, that should be fine, right? We are not doing the intro. We might be doing the intro tomorrow. Okay. Okay. Give me 2 minutes. Otherwise, okay, I can give you 2 minutes. Just give me give me something saying that we are going to introduce or not, because in that way, what I was planning is I will tell you why I was doing it, because my agenda was very real time. I was planning to capture something here in an Excel, and then I would like to tell you how the real time business processing happen. I wanted to collect something, and then that gets reality into a database design. And how do you think about it? How do you design it? What is the approach of designing the structure? That is where I was thinking of collecting some data. If not, then I can do some random processing of the data. That is fine. But real time would have given us some context and some fun. Do you want to wait for that, or do you want me to go ahead? Am I going to wait? Am I going to? Can you write something in the chat? Because I don't know. Shall I wait? Shall I not? Okay, fine. So continue the session today. Okay, fine. Sure. So what I will do is, okay, fine. So let us see what to do now. Okay. So as per the session, I will give you certain links here in the chart window. The second part of the SQL is around installing SQL Server. So because we are not introducing, it is fine. We'll proceed. We'll start with the SQL Server installation today. So let me again begin. First, let me copy this URL so that you can all do it. You can copy from the chat window. I don't know whether you will be able to copy it or not, because I don't see a lot of attendees in the chat window. So I will give the URL. Just let me know if you can copy, or Ramya, please let me know if you can distribute this URL. Okay. Are you able to see this? I'm going to share my screen. So when you either type this particular URL, click on this particular URL, it will take you to a window for downloading the Microsoft free version of the application software. Let me know if you are able to see see the screen where the SQL Server download utility is available. Can I get a thumbs up? Because I don't know, because no, I am not able to hear anything, so I'm assuming you got everything handy now. It is microsoft.com/en/in hyphen SQL Server hyphen SQL Server downloads. That is what the URL is all about. And I have pasted the link in the chat window. Please copy this particular link. I have highlighted it. Either if you want to type it, please type it. Microsoft.com/en, EN's for English, hyphen IN for India, hyphen SQL, hyphen server, hyphen SQL, hyphen server, part1-downloads. That is what the URL looks like. Give me a thumbs up if in the classroom everybody has opened this particular link. I will proceed further. Harish or anybody, can you give me write something in the chat window so that at least I know? Okay, fine. I will go ahead with the assumption that you have all opened because I'm not seeing anything in the chat window. Fine. Now what I will do is, once you go to this particular site, it will allow you to see these are the by default products for SQL available in under Microsoft SQL bucket, right? What we are interested in for the entire course, all these buckets are nearly same, but the way they are implemented or installed or the capabilities and the abilities they provide are different. Okay, we'll discuss about all these things towards the mid of the session, what this independent product means, what the installation category and types are. But for the development purposes, for our learning purposes, either we choose developer edition or a free express edition. Okay, okay, so what I will do, we'll go ahead and choose the developer as one of the download component. So please click on the developer edition here. If you can see my mouse cursor, choose and click on the developer edition and under this middle of the page. Okay, click the download now. It will actually download a small exe file for you. And if you see for Google Chrome, I can see this particular small component has started installing something on my machine. When I click on it, it say, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device if you're running a Windows 10 plus operating system on your laptop? Okay, say yes. Once you give the control to the Windows operating system, then you see a screen like this. Okay, on the SQL Server Developer Edition, what you will be seeing, there is a basic, there is a custom, and there is a download media option available. Choose the basic installation because we'll do the custom installation during the mid of the segment. I will say what are the component you might be interested for your data engineering or the data analytics study. Okay, so I will choose the basic as a model and then installation category, and then I would say I'm accepting all the end user license agreement. I would hit the EULA acceptance. Then it will say I'm installing a version of SQL known as SQL Server 2019. It is a developer edition, and it is going to give you the default location of the SQL installation. Unless, and you have to make sure one thing before installing is it needs 8 GB of space. Can you see that minimum free space needed is 8994 MB. One GB is 1024 MB, right? If you see, approximately 7 to 8 GB of space is needed when the SQL Server is being installed. So what I would recommend, verify that before installing on your C drive default location. By default, it will go in the C program files, Microsoft SQL Server. Before installing, make sure in the C drive you definitely have 8 to 10 GB of space left. In case you don't have, you can choose the browser window, change to a default path altogether. By default, it will go here. You don't do anything, choose your path. If you have a D drive, you have a E drive on your laptops, choose that, change the default path, browse, go to a specific location, and then keep the same hierarchy, program file, Microsoft SQL Server, but choose a different drive. If you want to change from C drive to D drive or E drive, do that. Okay, do not bother if it is on your machine, it is saying D drive or E drive or something. By default, your operating system is loaded on C, but in some cases it is also loaded on D and E depending upon what you have chosen or configured as your default partition. So do not bother if it is by default loading a D drive or E drive on your machine right now when you click this, right? Do one verification, make sure you definitely have 10 GB worth of free space available in your default location. I'm not changing my default location because I do have data available in my C drive, and I don't have a D drive. Even if I want to change, I don't have a D drive on my machine, so I can't go back and change it. Okay. With that assumption, I'm going to hit the install icon now. So I'm choosing a SQL Server Developer Edition, which is meant for non-production workload. You can download it, install it, play around with it, and learn. Typically, this particular Developer Edition gives you a lot of capabilities that you can leverage for doing your data engineering studies. Okay, I will now hit the install icon. What it will do by default, Microsoft SQL Server. This is known as the Microsoft SQL Server installer file. By default, what it will go and do, it will connect to the internet and try to download the installer and the necessary binaries for installing a product known as Microsoft SQL Server. Okay. You must be wondering, while this installation is going on, you must be wondering, why are we talking about Microsoft SQL Server here? Right? How SQL is related to Microsoft SQL Server or anything. Let me give a small story, right? SQL Server, do remember, is a product that provides SQL capabilities, whereas SQL is a language. Typically, when somebody says SQL, the full form of SQL is structured query language. Okay. SQL is a proprietary language and is owned by American National Standards Institute, ANSI. Do remember, SQL as a language is governed and owned by ANSI as an institute, American National Standards Institute, who govern the rules, regulation, command, structure, everything related to the SQL. Do remember, some of the documents, wikis, Google, anywhere you will start writing SQL, you will find a lot of interesting pointers and topics around the SQL. Do remember, how do you pronounce SQL? Are you going to say it is a SQL? Are you going to say SQL? Somebody say um, uh, typically in the industry there are two acronyms used. Either somebody will say it is a SQL because the full form is structured query language, and some folks in the industry also say it is SQL, SEQUEL. That is how they pronounce it, SQL. Okay. The story behind why it is also somebody says it as SQL is, in the way back era, 1980s, when the computer engineering world was evolving and the database technology was getting formed, in around 1982-83 timeframe, when IBM Corporation used to be the only one approved software engineering company in the world, they came up with a product known as COBOL mainframe. I don't know, because we didn't have the introduction, so I don't know how many of you are of have you ever heard about that particular product known as IBM's mainframe? Essentially, that is a very first enterprise-ready application governed by IBM Corporation at that point in time, and then uh, it did have a backend engine or a engine is known as COBOL. COBOL was the programming language using which you can do any kind of programming if on the mainframe platform. When COBOL was a file system driven application stack, at that point in time, IBM engineered some technology for doing reading and writing onto the file using a language known as SQL, SEQUEL. They said it is SQL. Okay. And ANSI as an organization who took over SQL as a programming language got formed around 1989s and 90s. Okay, that is where they tried to abide by the name coined by IBM Corporation known as SQL. So if somebody says SQL, that is fine. Someone says SQL, that is also fine. Why the name SQL is there? Because IBM called it as SQL and ANSI came after henceforth, right? Because a company has created something for doing the storage retrieval and manipulation on file system. So as a token of respect, SQL is also an acceptable terminology. Okay. So predominantly I will use SQL or SQL throughout my entire course. So understand we are talking about the SQL as a programming language. Okay. Now, if you can see my screen, my entire SQL Server Developer Edition installation is complete on my machine. Okay. I'm not going to do anything. I will take a pause here. I want to make sure, depending upon the internet, the capability, the installation might take beyond some time, but I want to talk about a few things. So I will take a pause just to see whether you have installed on your machine. How do I verify that? Ramya, can you help me with that? Giving a thumbs up, saying everybody in the class has already installed the application software. How do we verify? Anybody can confirm back whether everybody has installed the SQL Server, because from there on I can actually go to the next part of the session. Okay, I'm waiting. While I'm waiting, if people who have already completed the installation, you do definitely need to remember a few things here. Do remember, because you are doing the installation for the first time, a few things to look at. Okay, do remember you have installed the version of the SQL known as SQL Server 2019. The connection string, if you see the instance name by default, I will talk about what you mean by instance name and all in the next session probably, but do remember, by default, when you install the SQL Server, the by default installation of SQL Server will be given a name called as MS SQL Server 01. That is the default instance. If you have seen some different name coming up, that means maybe some other version of SQL is already loaded on top of that, and you are installing the SQL one more time, which is fine. You can install as many times you want to install, but do remember, every time you install, it will kill your 8 GB on your machine. Okay, like any other application software, in if you install a Windows Media Player on your Windows machine once, you can't install it second time. It will say either you repair it or you will uninstall the application software from your uh, Windows machine, right? Now, if you are using any operating system other than Windows right now, do remember, the installation of SQL Server is only supported right now on the Windows machine. If you have downloaded this particular binary, it should have actually, if it is getting downloaded on your Mac OS or any other OSs, if you are using any other laptop with a different version, just try installing. If it gets loaded, then you are all sorted. If not, I would recommend have a partition on your laptop build with a Windows operating system. Okay. If you have not done that, you can look at your in the classroom. Please look at either my screen, observe it. You can do it offline after going home, upgrading the operating system or adding an partition of Windows on top of it, right, where you can actually do the do this entire processing. For the development purpose, I'm installing SQL Server as the primary tool, because you will first learn SQL and then we'll run Postgre. Postgre can be installed on the Mac as well. Okay, but then the command stack varies. That is where we are running two of the product stack, SQL Server and parallel Postgre. In that way, you know how to leverage industry approved tool and also the freeware, and we'll also see how do we identify the differences. If the installation is complete, do remember the instance name means what? Whenever the SQL is instant in the SQL Server is installed on your machine, how do you connect to SQL Server with what name? So what I will do is I will open up a notepad, and then I will definitely take note of all this thing during my first installation, because I may I may be remembering what I am doing, but you may not. So what I would recommend, copy this item onto a notepad file for your later usage purposes. Okay. Copy the connection string. Do remember, connection string is a line of code that tells you how to connect to the SQL server, on from a specific programming language. Okay, the programming language can be a Python, .NET, doesn't matter, but how to connect from a program to the SQL Server using some connection string. So I would copy the log folder path. You can change the log folder path, or by default it will tell you where your log files are getting created. Installation media folder, where is your installation file is there, right? So you don't need to change anything, just copy these paths and everything, so that in future I will tell you how do you refer, because these things change. Like I said, by default your path would be C. If it is a path, then for everyone the paths are all same. But if it is not, during your installation you found D, or you didn't have space, or you have chosen something, I would still recommend copy all these things into a folder, into a file, and save it for your later purposes. Okay, so I would save this particular file as SQL Server installation details. Okay, save. Once you have done this particular piece, can somebody give me a thumbs up whether everybody in the session, in the class, has already installed? Can I, because we are now going to do the second part of the installation. This is the engine is installed. I will talk about what do you mean by engine, what is SQL, and all those components, but I need to install another application software to get started. So Ramya or anyone in the class can help me understand whether installation is taken care of in the class. Everybody has installed? I see a yes sir. Can I assume everybody has done the installation? Okay, fine. So now if you are seeing this particular screen, what we need to do is I'm going to hit the next icon here. If you see, there is a connect now, there is a customize, there is a install SSMS. Okay, I do have a SSMS installed on my machine. I can connect to it, but I would definitely recommend you click on this install SSMS right now. Okay, once you hit on the install SSMS, what it will do, it will open up a page of this site. Can you see this particular thing? Once you click that, it will open up a URL of this one. Okay, Control C. I'm giving the same thing in the chart window, and please click this URL. Click this URL. I would not say click the URL. I would say still go to the installation option, the developer edition, hit the install SSMS icon. It will open the browser window for you. Okay. Once you see this browser window, click on this one. Free download for SQL Server Management Studio, SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio, the short form of a client utility to connect to Microsoft SQL database engine. What we installed previously is a database engine on our machine. Now I want a client utility that will give me a graphical user interface, or a GUI, that will enable us to interact with the database technology. Okay, so click on this particular icon and it will actually start downloading the SSMS application software. Okay, now you can see my screen. It is actually downloading that particular downloader for allowing me to download a graphical user interface for interacting with the SQL. So please now start downloading this particular binary bit. And what we are installing, we are trying to install the SQL Server Management Studio now, which is a client utility or a graphical user interface to connect to the SQL Server 2019 Developer Edition. Two pieces of the information. First, we installed SQL Server 2019 Developer Edition. What that particular component was, that is known as the SQL Server Database Engine. What we are downloading right now, it is known as an installer that helps in doing, that provides you the capability to interact with the database engine. Okay, now once you click on this installer, it will ask for the permission. Do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? You say yes. Okay, Once you say yes, it will start the installation option. Okay, let's wait for the installer to get started. I can see the screen start coming onto my screen. Are you able to see this particular window now? I, I downloaded the SSMS setup ENU, then click on it. Once I click on it, it asks for changing or installing on my Windows machine. Once I start doing it, it is saying the version of the SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio is 18.12.1, which is the latest one, and it is saying welcome and click to begin. So what I will do, it will actually give me the path where it is installing. It is by default go into the same C drive program files, Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, and the version number. It will be 18. If you are using any previous version, then you will say 16, 17, or 18. Okay. By default, it will say 18 because I actually downloaded the latest version of the SQL Server Management Studio. Now I will hit install. So it will not take much time. It will it will be, it will be super fast. Let the installation complete, then we'll go back to the session topic. We'll try to do something. Let me know if there is someone in the class. Everybody is doing the same. I can't hear anybody. How many students are there in the class today? At least to get something, because I'm in a blind. I can't see you, so and I don't know how many of you are there. So I don't know really the progress, how are you making? But then if you're following my session, then it should be the same thing. Depending upon the network speed, you will be able to install it in a faster manner. Okay, so installation is going on. Okay, if you are in the classroom, you are able to hear me. Use the chat option if you have any questions or anything during the installation process. Do remember, like I said, it's a binary installation depending upon the internet speed. Okay, let it complete. We'll have to wait for it. It is a software installation. Unless and until it downloads its binary, I can't do anything further. So we'll sit back. We have to wait. It is going to take some time. It will. Okay, fine. Nearly done. So we will. I hope the people are doing alongside me. I don't know what is the internet status and stuff, but please bear with me why I'm doing it on the fly, because in that way everybody can spare time, nearly the similar amount of time, so that you can actually understand what are we trying to do right now. I didn't set up the context about the SQL or anything, but then I started downloading Microsoft SQL Server. We are talking about installing the application software and all. We'll know what exactly the SQL is, why did we do it, in all subsequent sessions. So toward the end of the session, you'll be very confident knowing the entire underlying of the SQL Server, how it works, how the PostgreSQL works, what are the command, how they are very similar in nature, what are the variation, how do you find out the variation. We'll come to know about all this thing. Also, every day, like I said, we'll be not only studying the theory part of the SQL, the programming language, we'll be doing real-time hands-on exercise. So I would encourage every one of you to practice the command that I am doing on my screen. Okay. So for doing that, this particular installation of the SQL is mandatory on your machine for the class. So if you are not able to do certain installation today, I would recommend follow the same thing, do the same installation process by after going back home. If you are running on a Mac OS, it might be different altogether. You have to load the SQL windows and then you can run on it. So essentially take time and do that particular thing. Now, if you see, my Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio with Azure Data Studio is also installation complete. Let me know if everybody has completed this particular installation window. I will wait for Ramya to give me a thumbs up, so that at least I can proceed to the next segment. We have installed SQL Server Database Engine. We have installed SQL Server Management Studio. Now we will go back to the session and I will tell you that, okay, Ramya has confirmed that continue and we'll do it later, which is fine. I'm going to, now my installation part is complete. What we'll do is we'll get started with the application system. Now, how do we verify that we downloaded something and now it is downloaded and now it is installed? We installed SQL Server 2019 Developer Edition. We installed on my local PC. Then I installed the install SSMS. SSMS stands for SQL Server Management Studio. Take some notes if you are holding notebook and pen. Take some notes if you are or you have your laptop only. Take some notes within your Word file or something. Okay. I will anyways give you the session PPT and read materials toward the end of the session, but it is always better to take some notes during the session as well. Okay. Now I will close all this icon. I will definitely remember this MS SQL Server 1 as my instance name. What I will do is I will close this icon window. Are you sure you want to exit? Because yes, my installation is done. So I can say one thing. I would say, are you sure you want to exit? No, I don't. Let me try connecting now. Let's see, it will connect to the, when you see the connect now, what it will do, it will actually connect to the SQL CMD. We'll understand what this SQL CMD means. But if you have installed, click on the connect now, you should be able to see one command prompt window connecting up and saying something is coming up onto this particular version, right? Like here, if I write select version, it should tell me which version of SQL I have loaded. If you see, I ran the command known as tell me what is the version of SQL loaded on my machine, and it is saying you have loaded Microsoft SQL Server 2019 with the RTM of 15.0.2000, right? And the copyright is reserved by Microsoft Corporation. Do you remember it is a developer edition, and it is for home usage and for learning purpose on non-production workload. That is the version we have loaded. We are not going to use this particular shell for our programming, but you can definitely use it as an administrator when you become a pro, or maybe after 10-15 days after this particular session, you would be able to know how to leverage the SQL CMD as well. Do remember, we are not going to do any command line programming cell in SQL Server, because SQL Server definitely provides a GUI. During the PostgreSQL, definitely there are two options. You can write your programming using the pgadmin cell, or using another component for the installation and connectivity to the PostgreSQL is known as the pgadmin. We'll talk about the PostgreSQL in a separate session altogether, because we are going for a dedicated discussion then. But for the SQL Server perspective, if you have installed and hit the connect now button, you should be able to see this particular command prompt, and you can write a command known as select @version. Okay, and then I'm going to give this in the chart window. Anybody want to try it, please copy from the chart window and then do that. Write a go after that particular command and it should work fine. Okay, if you see this particular icon well clear, then you are all sorted. Your installation is successful. Now what I will do, I will close this icon, I will close this window, I will say yes, I want to quit. Okay, now I will close this my browser window from where I have downloaded this entire utility. I'm coming back to the session. Let's continue, and then we'll see how much we can cover today. Okay, now what did we do? We have completed installation of SQL Server now. Okay, now let's move back to the second part of the slide. Now we'll talk about our how our sessions are structured, how the sessions look like. It might change, but now it is structured like this. We'll run the batches between the weekdays and weekends. Ideally on the weekdays, we'll definitely go from anytime between 6:30 till 8. Predominantly now it is settled at 7 a.m., but we'll choose between 6:30 to 8. And over the weekdays, it will be 1 hour session. On the weekend, it will be two-hour session. For the weekdays, we'll go as this structure. 40 minutes of the lecture time. During this entire lecture time, I'm not only going to talk about the theory, we'll be doing all hands-on exercise. We'll do how exactly the SQL is, what is the purpose of every SQL command. We'll learn what the SQL commands are, what are the sub languages available within the SQL. We'll start practicing every command as an exercise. Okay, as a real-time exercise also if possible. Okay. And for the 1 hour, we will also spare 20 minutes around two part. One, I will talk about industry interview question that you might expect when you are going for an interview for a data engineering or a data analytics purpose, or even if you are going for a SQL Server developer position, right? Anywhere you are going for this, what is the interview question that you can expect for that particular specific session? Okay, for the weekend batches, we will run 90 minutes of lecture time and 30 minutes of interview question and doubt clearing. In that way, we'll be completing the 2 hours worth of time. Okay, now I will move to the next part. We'll set up some ground rule. I don't know how are we going to run further, because now I don't know. I assumed that it will be all online. People will be joining online. Even if they are sitting in the class, they can join online. And what we were thinking of, there should be a way that at least while I'm talking, please pay attention to everything. I will be talking everything relevant as approved in the industry, right? How you approach a problem of a data engineering stack, how you leverage SQL, what should be your thought process, what command stack you know while you are learning something, what kind of interview question you are going to ask, right? When I say interview question, please take note of the interview question. I may prepare the interview question and send it off towards the end of the session so that you can prepare it well. But every day I will talk about what kind of interview question you can expect. I will definitely share that as on the PPT slide as well. Okay. During the exercise, I will do hands-on exercise, and I would encourage everybody to install SQL Server on your machine. Do not watch the presentation on my screen. Please try doing the same exercise alongside so that you will learn and ask any issue that you are facing at the real time, right? I can help you overcome that. If you have any question, put your question in the chat window. That is what I assume, but now everybody joining from the class will figure out how do we maintain this particular question log, right? If you have anything important, you have to raise your hand. Moderator will allow you to unmute, and then you are allowed to speak during that particular time. Like I said, in the last 20 minutes, faculty will allow you talk about your questions, and I will also talk about the interview question that is relevant for that specific topic for that day. Okay, these are the ground rules. With that, we'll get started. What we'll learn today, as the time is available, we'll try to talk about a few things. What are we going to cover throughout this entire SQL session that you are going to spend with me for the next 1.5 months of time? Okay, what we are going to learn is written in a very small manner, right? I have not given you the entire complete list. Anyways, during the entire session, I will talk about the entire detailed SQL agenda. But do remember, whenever you are going for any interview, like I said, it is entirely interview oriented, it is entirely job oriented. You are not coming here to learn something that you will not be able to implement. Or when you go for an interview, you might be thinking that you attended some session and you are not able to answer that. Do remember, what you are going to do after learning the entire SQL, you are going to do these 7 to 8 things throughout in your day in day out job in the real world, and also during the interview you will see questions around this segment. That is where I have actually bucketized it in the high level segment that you are going to learn uh, SQL concepts, the data definition language, what we are going to run through all the 5 sub-languages of SQL. SQL, like I said, structured query language, it is owned by NSI. And there are 5 sub-languages available: DDL, data definition language; DML for the data manipulation language; data control language, DCL; transaction control language for TCL; and data query language, the most powerful command known as select queries, that is data query language. Other than that, we'll understand what are the join technology, how do you join different container entities to formulate complex queries. Then we'll understand subqueries, we'll write views, we'll write cursor, we'll write trigger, procedures, functions, if else, conditions, and while loop. And then we'll package it everything within the procedure trigger and the packages concept available in Oracle. I will talk about that as well. So that will touch a packaging concept in some of the container, not everywhere the package is available. In SQL Server, the packaging concept is not there, so I didn't write it. But during the PostgreSQL and the Oracle will talk about the package session, a specific container known as a package as well, right? So programming perspective, once you learn all this thing, you can do any kind of SQL programming, any and all kind of SQL programming across industry up to 4 to 5 years of experience. That is what the guarantee that you can learn from here. Also, if you are thorough enough about the class itself, you are doing the exercises really well. I will give you assignments toward the end of the session. If you are doing that well, but be rest assured, for your entire data engineering or data analytics exercises, you have learned enough around the SQL for you to effectively complete your data engineering exercises as well. Okay, so this is what we are going to study. Now I will proceed further. We'll talk about what is this SQL and what are the applications of SQL. Okay, do remember, like I said, SQL is the programming language not owned by any corporation. There are so many big product warehouse companies like Microsoft Corporation, Oracle, IBM's, MySQL, Postgre. There are approximately 25 plus industry approved products available within the open source community, within the product or licensed model of database solutionings, right? But in the leading product maker, there are only 2, 3 licensed product where these are enterprise ready and used across industry. One is Microsoft Corporation. The product is known as SQL Server. One is Oracle Corporation. There are a lot of versions of Oracle available. Oracle 13G, 14, and Plus is the approved version of the products. Then if you go to the IBM, they have DB2 as one of the product. If you go to open source, then there are two leading products known as MySQL and Postgre. These are two of the product leveraged heavily if somebody do not want to pay license and still want to build application software. These are freeware, like we say, you can download, install, and even build production ready workload. Here, whatever we are downloading and doing, Microsoft is a corporation where this particular product version SQL Server 2019 developer that we downloaded, we can only use it for non-production workload. That means what? You can download, you can install, you can learn, but you cannot build product and ship it on top of it. It is not meant for that. It is solely meant for downloading and installing application and learning the technology. Okay. Now, when I say SQL, what does that SQL stands for? SQL stands for Structured Query Language. How it helps in the real world? What industry we are going to join? We are going to join IT industry. What does IT industry mean? Information technology industry. What is information technology? Information technology is the technology that helps transforming information into data and back to information upon need. That is what our IT stands for. Okay. Information technology is the technology that helps in translating information into data and back to information upon need. What is an example? Let's talk about IT first and then we'll go into the SQL. Okay. When somebody has opened a Gmail account or a Yahoo account, some mail chat component account, you try when you try to do a login and log out, is it like you do the login log out straightforward, or you have to go register, create an account in the Gmail first? It will ask for your tell me your first name, tell me your last name, tell me your age, tell me your date of birth, tell me your contact number, tell me your locality, tell me your region, tell me your country. It asks for a lot of question, right? It asks for a lot of question. It give you option either to put the specific questions answer in a text box, or it allows you to choose something from a drop down list. Say for example your country code, right? Typically they don't allow you to choose or write something because there are a specific bucket list of countries, and then we have a dedicated code assigned to that, right? You can choose the country code for before your phone number. So +1 for USA, +9 for India, like that, right? And gender and all this detail will be asked. Once you fill it, it will ask for your Gmail ID, right? It will tell you what Gmail ID you want to create, or what Yahoo ID you want to create, or what Outlook ID you want to create. Once you put that particular ID, it just doesn't go and create it. It will verify whether the similar ID is not taken by some other user. And it will also verify whether the ID is available at a given point in time when you are creating, right? If it is available, then it will allow you to create that Gmail account. With a user ID and a password, it will allow you to create it. Once you have created the account and it is provisioned successfully, then only you can log into the Gmail account by providing an user ID and password. Is that what the complete process we do? Typically, we register, and after that, later on, you use. Any application system, you will see the same pattern. You will do some kind of data insertion. While you registered, you do something. What did you do? It asked for your first name. It asked for your last name. It asked for your age. It asked for what user ID you want to take, right? It asked for your country name, city name, your PIN code, everything it asked for, right? In the real world, information means elaborated definition of context. Elaborated definition of context means what you read in the newspaper. If you are reading a newspaper article, say for an example Times of India, the Hindu, or anything that you are reading through, right? A newspaper has a header article, and then there is a descriptive definition of that header. Example, today XYZ corporation becomes a $40 billion company is the head news article. Then it will say today XYZ corporation is listed on NASDAQ or on National Stock Exchange. It was doing software business, and now the revenue grew by 17% year on year. it is registered in XYZ. There will be some elaborated definition available, right? And now because of so much of revenue, they hit the landmark revenue of XYZ billion dollar, right? Typically some definition. All these things that you read in the newspaper are nothing but information. Do remember, it is a information world. Everywhere you see elaborated description are nothing but information. Okay, then why we are saying information technology is a technology that helps transform information into data and back to information upon need. That is what I said about information technology. You may not find the same definition if you go to Google, but across industry, that is the understanding about information technology. Okay, it is a technology. It is not one technology. It is our technology that supports and provide the technological capability to transform information into data and back to information upon need. What are those technology then? That is why it is known as information technology. There are hundreds of programming language available that allows you to do the same thing in different manner. Okay, the technology that allows you to transform your information into a data and back to information upon need is the technology. Okay, what are the programming language available in the industry? So many. Java, C++, C programming, Python, .NET, C Sharp, VB.NET, JSharp.NET, C++.NET, VC++, COBOL, mainframes, JavaScript, TypeScript, XMLs, JSONs, HTMLs, right? Everything is a different programming language with a different capability to help you do the same thing. What they allow you to do, transform information into data back to information upon need. That is what they do, right? Also, some of the programming languages like SQL also helps you do the same thing. Okay, transformation of information into data and back to information. I have used this particular statement n number of times. You may hear my same statement again and again, but I want to emphasize certain things. Do remember, when I repeat certain statement, you can take notes on them. Okay, very important definition, and these are interview questions as well. What do you mean by IT? What do you mean by information? What is data? Okay, information is context about a data, elaborated definition about a data. Okay, if you ask very much WH questions to the information line, the answers you get are data. Example, today, XYZ Corporation became a $40 billion company. Okay, this is one statement made. Is it an example of information or data? Answer is, it is. This entire English statement is information. Okay, what data it is carrying then? If you're saying this entire line is information, what data it is carrying? If you ask WH question to the English statement or the information line, the answers you get are the data. Okay, let's start asking WH question. What do you mean by WH question? Are, when, what, where, whose, whom, right? Any question that start with WH, any question phrase that comes with a WH, if you ask a question, whatever answers you get out of that are actually data or the hidden data. Okay, which company we are talking about here? XYZ Corporation. The answer is XYZ Corporation here. What are we talking about? Increase in profit. It is a descriptive answer. Increase in profit or decrease in profit, but it is definitely a description that we can say, is the company growing or it is actually shrinking, right? How much did it grow year on year this year? It hit the landmark of $40 billion. So when I say XYZ Corporation grew year on year by X number and now hit a $40 billion revenue, the 10 statement now become only 3 word. XYZ Corporation grew $40 billion. Okay, the revenue is $30 billion, right? Now we have understood, if I am making 5, 6, 7 statement and then I'm asking WH question, the answers I'm getting is the data. Do remember, If you go to the definition of data information across in Google, Bing, wherever you go type, you'll find a few different type of answers. Do remember the answers for the data you will find. There is a raw information, what you will find, right? A descriptive information, what you will find, processed information, what you will find in Google or something. Do you remember? What did I say? Descriptive information. That means English-like statements are information. Elaborated description about a statement, an object, and objective is information. If you ask WH question, you are actually processing the data. Okay. So the processed information is data. Do you remember? Highlight it, remember it, or take a note of it. Data is always a processed information. Okay. Information is the descriptive header and objective about the data, or raw data is known as also information. Raw data, raw form of data means what? Nothing, no processing has happened. Newspaper articles, 8-9 pages of newspaper article, hundreds and thousands of words written with that. But if you go and ask question by reading those English statement, you may find you can shrink a 1,000-word article into only 10-15 words into that particular context. So if you read and ask question, whatever way you can shrink this entire information is the information technology processing. Okay, I started my journey from SQL. I went back to information technology. We discussed about information and data. Do you remember SQL is a technology that helps store data? SQL only discusses the concept about the data. Okay, what are we talking about? Are we talking about only the processed information throughout? Yes, absolutely yes. In data containers or the databases, we only store data. That is why the container where we store the data is known as database, not an information base. If we are storing information or elaborated description, then the technology would have been known as information base, right? There is no word so as an information base. There is database. So what we store in a container is data, and data is getting stored in a database. That is the history and the fundamental rules of understanding what do we store in the database. Answer is we store data in the database. What do you mean by data? Data is the processed information. What do you mean by processed information? Processed information stands for, if you ask WH questions to the information, whatever answers you get out of that is the data. Clear? Now let's go back. What is the applications of SQL? The SQL helps you store the data in a database. It helps you do the data engineering concepts. It helps you do data analytics on the stored data. You can run data warehousing queries to create data warehouses, run analytics on top of the data cubes and stuff. You can do data manipulation. You can do data extraction using the SQL as a programming language. Okay. These are a few of the implementation, but not all. Okay, you can store data, you can manipulate data, you can extract data, you can do data engineering, you can do data analytics, you can do data warehousing. We'll talk about all this concept throughout our journey. Okay, now what some of the features of SQL? Okay, like we said, features of SQL is known as structured query language. It is simple to use. It is a easy to learn language. It is a versatile programming language. A lot of companies are selling database products that supports the hidden programming language SQL. Okay, the pioneers of SQL programming language are IBM's, Microsoft Technology, Microsoft Corporation, Oracle, MySQL, Postgre. These are the products that is available across the industry and heavily used across the IT companies. Okay, SQL is an ANSI and ISO standard language for database creation and manipulation. Do you remember? SQL as a programming language is owned and formulated by American National Standards Institute. Do you remember? Though Microsoft is selling a product known as Microsoft SQL Server 2019 Developer Edition that we installed on our system, or if you are installing Oracle as a product on your machine, You are installing MySQL as a product, you are installing Postgre as a product. The language they support is SQL only. In the industry, whatever product you download and install for doing your SQL querying is abided by the SQL fundamental programming language, and it is all postulated by American National Standard Institute. These are a set of commands and syntaxes that NSI told if you are selling a product known as database product, it has to come with a proper structure. These are the command that should be available in your product stack. These are the command, and the purpose of those commands are written and defined. Okay, SQL has a very well defined definitive structure. I will tell you why ANSI also came into existence. We'll learn that particular story so that you understand why every product abide by the SQL. Okay, SQL has very well defined definitive structure. It is SQL. This particular statement I have copied from somewhere. SQL is very fast in retrieving large amount of data very efficiently. Yes and no. Yes and no, as in there are much better product for doing OLTP system, online transaction processing system, without the SQL as well. Those systems are known as NoSQL. NoSQL is much better and much faster as compared to the SQL for doing DML operation, for doing inserts, updates, and delete. But SQL definitive capability is it is very fast, very efficient in doing retrieval of the data and retrieval of huge volumetric data. Okay, SQL is actually related to the relational database management system. We'll understand what RDMM is throughout the journey. We'll talk about it granularly, but SQL is very much related to the relational database management products. And NoSQL is a concept available for document-like structure. You want to store the entire document within a data container. You want to write query on top of it. It is known as NoSQL document DB structure. Wherever you want to flat and formulate your answers in a row and column manner, that becomes a relational type of structure. Okay, we'll understand more about it. Don't worry about it. Now, these are some of the silent features of SQL as a programming language. Let me give you the example of why SQL is owned by American National Standard Institute. And had it not been owned by that, what would have been the issue across the world? Think about this. Microsoft as a company has built so many products, okay? Or Google as a company has built so many products, right? Now, when you build a product, is it going to be compatible across whether a Windows Word file opens up as is in Mac OS, or a media file created within the Windows loads as is in Mac OS or a Linux machine? Yes, no. Some applications open up, some doesn't. Is not even supported in some of the operating system. That is across true. File created in macOS in a different format that is very much native to macOS may or may not be supported in Windows as well, right? Because everybody want to sell a product that is very much limited to their environment ecosystem and that have the unique feature. So what happened in the earlier era, like when the database infrastructure environment was getting evolved, at that point in time, like I said, IBM Corporation developed the IBM mainframes and DB2 at that point in time. But then a few companies like Microsoft Corporation started its fast SQL version on a SQL Server 7.0. Oracle came up with the fast version of the Oracle. And then what was happening at that point in time? They were non-compatible. They have their own copyrighted language, right? So say for an example, a customer A bought a product of Oracle. He has gone for a full-fledged development using Oracle as a database product, and he thought like his business will grow very rapid. Oracle was a costlier product, and then what he decided that I will choose Oracle as a database product because it is very scalable, it is giving me so and so capabilities, but the product licensing cost is very high. Assume the product license cost was $100,000 at that point in time, right? He thought his business will grow and he can afford these kind of scalable platforms and the IT platforms infrastructure. What he realized after 6 to 7 months into the business, he found that his IT cost is way much more than his real income out of the real world business, right? He is doing a retail business, or he was doing a car manufacturing, so owning shopping, rental, whatever kind of business he was doing, right? But his business didn't grow as he was thinking that he could have spent on IT. He definitely wanted IT, but not Oracle as a database product. So he asked his IT team, I think that we are paying a heavy license on the Oracle. Can you help me change my Oracle database to a lesser version, but a good, healthy product like Microsoft SQL Server or open source like or maybe IBM's DB2 then, right? Do you remember at that point in time, there was no authority who was controlling the programming language. So if you have written an application software using Oracle, you have to stick to the Oracle, because if you have to go and choose SQL Server as the product, because the languages was not compatible at that point in time, it has to be entirely redeveloped. Whatever application and code was built using Oracle for making sure that application is running at that point in time, every line of code was needed to be built on Microsoft SQL Server. Why? Because it was not supported the whatever data was stored on Oracle, it was not easy to migrate to SQL Server or IBM DB2 in that particular manner. Now customers started feeling the burnt. I chose the wrong decision, but now I am going to be stuck with that. I chose Oracle as a product in the early era of 1990s and late 1880s. I have spent billions of dollars of money in building the application system. Now my business is not growing, but I can't change my database technology product. I own the product. I paid money. I build the application software, but I am not able to change the database product, where I could have saved money. If I change from Oracle to SQL Server, it will be less costly. It will give me the support capability, everything that is available, and at a lesser cost. I don't have the ability. You think about the vice versa scenario. A small company thought like, I will not go my revenue that much. I will choose SQL Server as a product or IBM DB2 as a product, because it is less inexpensive for me. I can spend the amount of money these companies are asking. So I chose this particular product. But what happened? My business idea clicked, and I thought that I will be making million. Rather making million, I made $1 billion worth of money out of it. Now my application system can't grow, because at that point in time SQL Server and DB2 were not that scalable product. 1980s and 19s I'm talking about, not that scalable product. Now that particular company was trying to scale it up. Right now he's bottlenecked with the ability that SQL Server and IBM's DB2 are providing, that they can handle this many of OLTP workload. Beyond that, it will degrade, right? Now the customer wanted to go to Oracle. He can't go. Why? The data type, the data that is hosted in IBM DB2 or Microsoft SQL Server is not compatible at that point in time. And every program that you have written for doing your ETL, extraction, transformation, load objective within those programming stack was also not compatible. Now the customers have started complaining, saying, I paid money, but now I am bottlenecked to change the database product. That is where ANSI came up with the theory that yes, customers are strained because you are not providing supportability between the database product, because data is the premium product, right? What your application can't run without the data. Data belongs to customer. Technology may be yours, but the data belongs to customer. Why are you restricting a customer not to be able to take data from Oracle to SQL Server to DB2, right? They shouldn't be strained up. Then ANSI formulated that going further, if anybody want to sell a product, they have to abide by my language and protocol that I am proposing as structure query language. In my protocol, I am going to propose 5 sub-language within that. Okay, what are those sub-languages? I'm going to propose, if you are doing this, you should have data definition language command, you should have data manipulation language command, data control language command, transaction control language command, and data query language ability. Without this standard structure commands and abilities, you cannot sell the product. That essentially mean any product after the first version that came out was known as SQL92 standard, and that came up around the year 1991-92 time frame, and that is where you will see some in the documents and everywhere the notation SQL92 or SQL 2003. So these are the two widely used SQL standard, not much of variance between them. A few new commands were introduced in SQL 2003 standard, but majority of the SQL 92 standard are still relevant, and that is relevant up to 90% till now. Okay, that is where the SQL was formulated. Now we'll start reading about the data definition language command. we'll try to see. We have still 9 minutes to cover today. We'll see that we'll start with the SQL's fast command stack known as data definition language. What is this particular command? How many commands this particular data definition language support? It supports 5 commands: create, alter, drop, rename, and truncate. Okay, these are the only 5 commands available under the data definition language. What do you do using this data definition language command, right? What are you going to do using the DDL command? DDL command, do remember, like it is known as data definition language, DDL command is a sublanguage of SQL that allows you to do a few things. What you can do? You can create the structure of the data storage for storing the data, right? You want to store the data somewhere on the on your database. You can create the structure container or the objects inside the database product for storing the data. You can modify the structure of the container. You can entirely delete the container. You have created a data container that you thought like you will be using it, but later you found it is not needed anymore. You can delete the data structure container, right? You can rename the structure of a container from X to Y. And it also allows you a special ability known as truncate. Truncate means what? You can actually keep the container but delete all the data within the container. Okay, data definition language command has 5 capability: create, alter, drop, rename, and truncate. And we'll study one by one. Today we'll start with the create because today wanted to be a light session, and starting in the next session onward we'll complete the DDL objective, and one by one. Okay, now before going into that, I spoke about a lot of concept to install SQL Server. Let's see how do I start my SQL Server. I will go to my Windows prompt. I will type SSMS. Okay. Once I type SSMS in my Windows search icon, I see Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio 18 as an app comes up, and I will click that particular app to come up. I did what? I went into my Windows search grid on my taskbar. I started writing SSMS, and when you do that, it gives you the option of Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio 18, and this is the application that comes up. Okay, and okay, let me do one thing. I will drag this icon here. Are you able to see my screen now? This is how SQL Server Management Studio looks like. You have already installed it, and you have done the same thing that I was talking about. Go to the Windows search bar here, and then you can start writing Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio or write SSMS, and then it will open up this particular utility. Once you do that, what you can do, by default it will actually give you the connection option, but now I will say file, connect object explorer, and it will tell me connect to something. By default it is saying connect to my server. I have installed it on a laptop from where I am presenting, so it is by default taking my server name as my laptop name. Okay, I will say connect me. SQL Server Management Studio is a client application. It is trying to connect to the SQL Server installed on the machine. Which machine? The machine name is my machine name, and then it will connect to the database server. Let's see, is it connecting to the database server? Yes, it is going and connecting to the database server. Okay, now I also want to connect to a different database engine. Let's see, can I connect to a database engine known as that? I during installation my database engine name was this one. Let me try. Can I connect to this database engine instead of my default database engine? Let me see. Let's see whether it is able to find the instance name was this one or not. Let us verify that. I somehow believe it is not, because had it, it would have. Okay. Instead of doing that, can I do something here? And I will go to the server name drop down. I will go for browse more. I will go for browse more. I will choose the database engine. And can I see what did I do? I went to, if my server name is blank, right? I have 3 options. What I will do, I will go to this drop down. I will go for browse more. I will go to the database engine, and then I can choose SQL Server as product. By default, I've installed SQL Server earlier as well. So it will give me my default name. You will see a default name for that. But now I have installed alongside today another version of SQL Server known as SQL 2019 Developer Edition. So by default, when I installed it, it has given a name called as my default laptop name and an instance name. So if you are installing for the first time, you may only see your laptop name as the server. So go ahead and select that. You have already installed SQL Server on your machine, you will see the instance name and the server name, right? Like I copied in the machine. This is the server name that I installed. So I can verify that this is the version I installed. I can see this version as here, MS SQL Server 01. So I'll choose that product and say OK. And then I will say connect. Okay, done. I'm able to connect to my database engine. I will stop this particular product because I know it is a different version of the SQL. I could connect to my through the SQL Server Management Studio to the database engine known as SQL Server 2019 Developer Edition that I installed as a database product from Microsoft Corporation. Okay, I connected. Now what shall I do? I have the ability to create databases. We'll understand all these things in a subsequent session. It is very way too early for today, but I just wanted to get started. That is where we are doing some basic exercises. Okay. Now, what we need to do is we have to go to the databases window. Once you go to this particular icon, open your SQL Server, you connect it to the SQL Server. Once you connect to it, open the databases, go click on the databases, then hit the new query window here. Can you see this new query window here highlighted under the tools menu? Hit the new query menu here. Okay. Once you open up the new query menu, we will first do one command today. We'll learn what does the create command means. I said data definition language help you create objects within the SQL Server, and one of the object being the database itself. I want to create a container to store a lot of objects within that. Okay. Do remember database is a container that abstracts the data, the procedure, the functions, the triggers within that particular database object. Okay. Whatever data you want to store, it gets stored within the database. So how do I create a database then? The command proposed by SQL under DDL is create command. How do I create a database? I will say create database. I want to create a database. So I will say create object type object name. That is the definition. Let me go back to my SQL presentation. Can you see here? We are going to study about the DDL, and we are only going to study about the create command. Okay. The create command structure is create object type object name. That is what the structure is as proposed by NSI. Now, if I have to create a database, I can actually do one command known as create. Sorry, I have to make it the presentation mode. Sorry about that. Yeah. Create database study. I want to create a database known as study database. So how do I do that? What I will do, I will go to my SQL Server Management Studio. I will say create database study, STUDY, and then I will say a line go. Go is very much it is not needed, but we will write. I will talk about go, why it is important, and it is very much for the SQL Server, not for the Postgre or MySQL or Oracle. Go is not needed, but for SQL Server, go is a very good abstraction to do that. Okay, create database name. Okay, this is the command. What I will do, I will highlight them. Sorry about that. I will go to my query window one. I will highlight that particular line and then hit the execute button here, or hit the F5 key on my machine. Either I hit function F5 or F5 control key, or I hit the execute button. If you go to the execute also, it will highlight, hit the F5, that will run. What I will do, if I hit this execute button, it will go. This is the command that I am issuing using SQL Server Management Client Utility to the SQL Server product, SQL Server 2019 Developer Edition. Help me create a database whose name is study. Okay, I hit the command and it is saying command completed successfully at a given point in time. There is no error, command executed. But what happened? How do I know whether the study database is created or not? My command purpose was create a database called as study. Okay, how do I verify? I will go to the databases node. I will do a right click and refresh. Can I see a database automatically getting created known as study here? My command was create database study, and what SQL Server did, create object type object name, create Object type is database, object name is study. I want to create a structure known as study database, and the object type is database. I want to create an object known as study, right? So I created a study database. If I go and open the study, I see a structure. There are table, there are views, there are synonym, there is programmability, storage, security. All these things came out. What happened? We'll discuss about what happened when I say create database name. Do remember, I will talk about a few concepts and interview question for today. Okay. By default, do remember it is very much related to the SQL Server. There will be some other question related to the Postgre, but do remember, whenever you install SQL Server, by default, 5 databases are loaded by default. Okay, those are known as system databases. Can you see here under the database? If I go to the database node, minimize, maximize, I see a load known as system database. Okay, by default, there will be 5 databases default loaded on your system. One is known as the master database, one is the model, one is the MSDB, one is the TemDB, one database is hidden. That database is known as resources database, RESOURCES, resources database. We'll talk about all these individual databases, the purpose in subsequent session. But do remember, whenever you install SQL Server, by default 5 databases are loaded. Master database is the most important database for maintaining the health of the SQL Server. Where the SQL Server is loaded, what type of objects are available, what other databases are available. Every related databases for starting up SQL Server is available in master. If this database gets corrupt, your SQL Server is all corrupt. Do remember, whenever, whatever you do not touch your master database on your machine. If it gets corrupt, that essentially means your SQL Server will never load. Whatever data is stored on this machine is never going to work fine. Okay, make sure you are not touching this database. Do remember, there is a database known as model database. Okay, model database is known as a template database. Can you see there are tables, views, everything written over there? There is a dummy structure. Do you remember, model is known as a template database from where other database acquire their structure from. Okay, when I say create database study, what SQL Server did is it found an instruction from DDL command stack, because it is a create. Create means data definition language. Data definition language purpose is create the structure data container within the SQL Server. So when I did say create database study, what did it do? It went ahead, copy the structure of the model database, restored it on the MySQL Server machine, and renamed it to study. That is what it did. What did it do? It copied the structure of the model database, restored it on my machine, and renamed to study database. Okay, that is how, when you say, when this particular command executed, it copied the entire structure of the template database called as model, and all the content of the model database is copy pasted here. Okay, if I go to the table, show me what tables are available over here. There is no table. There is no absolutely no tables available in the study database, because I created a blank container where I want to create the structure of the study database. Okay, this is the simple command where we can use to create a database. So create is the data definition language command, and it supports the structure create, object type, and the object name. Now I could use the structure to create a database using the create database study. Now I want to create a table where I want to store my relational data. Okay. Now before going and storing the relational data, I will talk about a few concepts here. Okay. What do you mean by relational data? Let us understand. I actually intended to do this exercise before. So why don't we do that? Anyways, we are going beyond time. We could do this entire exercise tomorrow once we figure out how we want to communicate and do that. From there on, we'll actually start the tables and container creation and the remaining of the DDL command. Uh, shall we take a pause here? Ramya, can you give me a nod? Will it be okay to stop here now? It is already 8:35. For the today's session, we are not going for the 2-hour session. It is the initial beginner. I want you to give time so that you can complete your installation and everything is handy. And then we will be going full stretch to start the programming with the DDL, DML, and everything in a sequence. We have a structure to follow. But can Ramya, can I go ahead and stop here so that we can start afresh with contain how to understand the relational table structure and stuff, and then from there on we'll actually create the table and progress further. Okay. Okay, thank you, team. Thank you for today's session. Please come prepared with installing the SQL Server handy. If you are running with a Mac OS or something, try to install Windows and then on top of that install the SQL. And I'm stopping to share my the share. Ramya, is it a good time to stop now? Can I stop? I'm waiting for the chat window. If somebody can give a confirmation. I don't see any question in the chat window also. I was supposed to look at the question data to information. Oh, Harish is responding. Okay, I didn't look at. Thank you, Harish, for this. Yes, today want to stop, Ramya. So we have done few purposes today. We wanted to cover what is the agenda, the structure. We wanted to do the installation. We could install it. We did verify. We are able to connect to our SQL Server, install SQL Server, and then we have started with a basic command known as create database command. And this is where we want to stop, and then subsequently we'll start the DDL command in a very detailed manner, because I want to talk about the data. How do you actually structure your data? What is first normal form, second normal form, and how do you structure your container? And we'll proceed from there. Okay. Thank you, team. Thank you so much.